right. Page 179, T for tiny, or TN. The eighth tree is the holly, which flowers in July. The holly appears in the originally Irish romances of Gawain, and the Green Knight. The Green Knight is an immortal giant whose club is a holly bush. He and Sir Gawain, who appears in the Irish version of Cuchulainn, a typical Hercules, make a compact to behead one another at alternate New Year's, meaning midsummer and midwinter, but in effect the Holy Knight spares the Oak Knight. In Sir Gawain's marriage, a Robin Hood ballad, King Arthur, who there has a seat at Carlisle, says, "As I came over a moor, I see a lady where she sate between an oak and green holland. She was clad in red scarlet." This lady, whose name is not mentioned, will have been the goddess Credelad, for whom in Welsh myth the Oak Knight and Holly Knight fought every 1st of May until Doomsday. Since in medieval practice St. John the Baptist, who lost his head on St. John's Day, took over the Oak King's titles and customs, it was natural to let Jesus, as John's merciful successor, take over the Holly Kings. The holly was thus glorified beyond the oak, for example, in the Holly Tree Carol. Of all the trees that are in the wood, the holly bears the crown, a sentiment that derives from the Song of the Forest Trees. Of all trees whatsoever, the critically best is holly. In each stanza of the carol, with its apt chorus about the rising of the sun, the running of the deer, some property of the tree is equated with the birth or passion of Jesus. The whiteness of the flower, the redness of the berry, the sharpness of the prickles, the bitterness of the bark. Holly means holy, yet the holly, which is native to the British Isles, is unlikely to be the original tree of the alphabet. It has probably displaced the evergreen scarlet oak, with which it has much in common, including the same botanical name, ilex, and which was not introduced into the British Isles until the 16th century. The scarlet oak, or kerm oak, or holly oak, is the evergreen twin of the ordinary oak, and its classical Greek name, Prinos and Hyssagre, are also used for holly in modern Greek. It has prickly leaves and nourishes the kerm, a scarlet insect not unlike the holly berry, and once thought to be a berry, from which the ancients made their royal scarlet dye and an aphrodisiac elixir. In the authorized version of the Bible, the word oak is sometimes translated terebinth and sometimes scarlet oak, and these trees make a sacred pair in Palestinian religion. Jesus wore kerm scarlet when attired as King of the Jews, Matthew 27:28. We may regard the letter D and T as twins, the lily-white boys clothed all in green of the medieval Green Rushes song. D is the oak which rules the waxing part of the year, the sacred druidic oak, the oak of the golden bow. T is the evergreen oak which rules the waning part, the bloody oak. Thus, an evergreen oak grove near the Corinthian Asopus was sacred to the Furies. Dan and tan, the equivalent of tin, was a Celtic word for any sacred tree. In Gaul and Brittany, it meant oak. In Celtic Germany, it meant fir. In Cornwall, the compound glass tan, green sacred tree, meant evergreen holm oak. And the English word to tan comes from the use of its bark in tanning. However, in ancient Italy, it was the holly, not the evergreen oak, which the husbandmen used in their midwinter saturnalia. Tanis was the name of the Gaulish thunder god, and Tina that of the thunder god, armed with the triple thunderbolt, whom the Etruscans took over from the Godelic tribes among whom they settled. The identification of the Pacific Jesus with the holly or holly oak must be regretted as poetically inept, except insofar as he declared that he had come to bring not peace but the sword. The Tanist was originally his twin's executioner. It was the Oak King, not the Holly King, who was crucified on a T-shaped cross. Lucian, in his trial in the Court of Vowels about 160 A.D., is explicit. Men weep and bewail their lot and curse Cadmus with many curses for introducing Tau into the family of letters. They say it was his body that tyrants took for a model, his shape that they imitated when they set up the erections on which men are crucified. Staros, the vile engine, is called, and it derives its vile name from him. Now, with all these crimes upon him, does he not deserve death? Nay, many deaths. For my part, I know none had bad enough, but that supplied by his own shape, that shape which he gave to the gibbet named Stratos after him by men. And in the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas, composed at about the same date, the same theme reoccurs in a dispute between Jesus and his schoolmaster about the letter T. The schoolmaster strikes Jesus on the head and prophesies the crucifixion. In Jesus' time, the Hebrew character Tav, the last letter of the alphabet, was shaped like the Greek Tau. The Holly rules the 8th month, and 8 as the number of increase is well suited to the month of the barley harvest, which extends from July 8th to August 4th. C for coal. The 9th tree is the hazel in the nutting season. The nut in Celtic legend is always an emblem of consecrated wisdom, something sweet, compact, and sustaining, enclosed in a small hard shell. As we say, this is the matter in a nutshell. The Wren's Dinnishinachos, an important early Irish topographical treatise, describes a beautiful fountain called Cumlaw's Well near Tipperary, over which hung the 9 hazels of poetic art, which produce flowers of fruit, i.e. beauty and wisdom, simultaneously. As the nuts dropped into the well, they fed the salmon swimming in it, and whatever number of nuts any of them swallowed, so many bright spots appeared on its body. All the knowledge of the arts and sciences was bound up with the eating of these nuts, as has already been noted in the story of Phaon, whose name Gwion adopted. In England, a forked hazel stick was used until the 17th century for divining not only buried treasure in hidden water, as now, but guilty persons in cases of murder and theft. And in the book of St. Albans, 1496 edition, a recipe is given for making oneself as invisible as if one had eaten fernseed, merely by carrying a hazel rod, a phantom and a half long, with a green hazel twig inserted in it. The letter Col was used as the bardic numeral 9 because 9 is the number of sacred to the Muses and because the hazel fruits after 9 years. The hazel was the bile ratha, the venerated tree of the wrath in which the poetic Aes Sidhi lived. It gave its name also to the god named Mac-Col, or Mac-Col, son of the hazel, who, according to Keating's History of Ireland, was one of the 3 earliest rulers of Ireland, his 2 brothers being Mac-Ciach, son of the plough, and Mac-Green, son of the sun. They celebrated a triple marriage with the triple goddess of Ireland, Ir, Fodla, and Banba. This legend appears at first sight to record the overthrow of the matriarchal system by patriarchal invaders, but since Green, the sun, was a goddess, not a god, and since both agriculture and wisdom were presided over by the triple goddess, the invaders were doubtless goddess worshippers themselves and merely transferred their filial allegiance to the triple goddess of the land. In the Fainan legend of the ancient dripping hazel, the hazel appears as a tree of wisdom that can be put to destructive uses. It dripped a poisonous milk, had no leaves, and was the abode of vultures and ravens, birds of divination. It split in 2 when the head of the god Balor was placed in its fork after his death, and when Phaon used its wood as a shield in battle, its noxious vapors killed thousands of the enemy. Phaon's hazel shield is an emblem of the satiric poem that carries a curse. It was as the Druidic herald's tree that the hazel was arbiter in Gwyon's Cadgadoo, and ancient Irish heralds carried white hazel wands. The hazel is the tree of wisdom, and the month extends from August 5th to September 1st. One more. M for Muin. The 10th tree is the vine in the vintage season. The vine, though not native to Britain, is an important motif in British Bronze Age art, so probably the Danes carried the tree itself northward with them as well as the emblem. It fruited well there on a few sheltered southern slopes, but since it could not be established as a wild tree, they will have used the bramble as a substitute. The fruiting season, the color of the berries, and the shape of the leaf correspond, and blackberry wine is a heady drink. In all Celtic countries, there is a taboo against eating the blackberry, though it is a wholesome and nourishing fruit. In Brittany, the reason given is a cause des fées, because of the fairies. In Majorca, the explanation is different. The bramble was the bush chosen for the crown of thorns, and the berries are Christ's blood. In North Wales, as a child, I was warned merely that they were poisonous. In Devonshire, the taboo is only on eating blackberries after the last day of September, when the devil enters into them, which substantiates my theory that the blackberry was a popular substitute for moon in the West Country. The vine was sacred to the Thracian Dionysius and to Osiris, and a golden vine was one of the principal ornaments of the Temple of Jerusalem. It is the tree of joy, exhilaration, and wrath. The month extends from September 2nd to September 29th and includes the autumn equinox. All right.